Hello, good evening. It is Friday, and I am going to be hosting an Instagram Live with Ross Cobb. I'm very excited. We have our first person who's joined. Hello, hello. I'm just going to wait till Ross joins us, and then you'll get to see him on here too. Oh, good. Cobb Wines is here. All right. Hello, Ross. Okay, you're connecting. Oh, hello. Can you just
Hello.
turn your phone the other way because you're a little sideways?
Yes.
I did that once before. It was really entertaining.
Great. Hello.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you.
I know. I'm looking at your gorgeous view. I'm getting a little jealous. I'm just in my dining room. I don't have a vineyard and blue skies behind me.
It's a beautiful day. You can see a little bit of the fog over the ocean, but overall it's pretty clear day today.
Yeah, I know. And we both dressed up. I mean, I'm probably overdressed. I'm in like a leopard dress, but honestly, at this point, it's just nice to have something to dress up for. And you're a very special person, and your wines I adore. So why not, elevate this tasting? Uh-oh, you're spinning a little bit. Thank you, Ross. Well, I'm going to give it like a minute or two. We've got the first minute or two, it's sort of like spitfire and people popping on and stuff. So we can just sort of chit chat and slowly get things started, but not too much because I think, it's only 5:02. Okay, I've got all of my wines poured. I guess we could talk in the meantime before we get into like your background and stuff. Can you hear me? Because I can't really see you. Oh, hello, Liz. It's so fun seeing all these familiar faces. Okay, so why don't we just talk, let's do like an overview of what we're going to be tasting today, and then I'll start asking some more questions, and so we can share more about your background and all of your amazing winery history.
Sounds great. Okay.
Okay, do you want to run through the lineup? You're a little more familiar with it than me. They are your wines.
You're out on the
I will do a visual. Oh, good. We're both doing a visual.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have a Chardonnay. We'll start with the 2017 Docks Ranch Chardonnay. We have a tiny 1 acre Chardonnay vineyard right next door to Coastlands Vineyard where we are now. And this is the inaugural bottling of the Docks Ranch Joanne's Block Chardonnay, 175 cases. The second Pinot is a Pinot Noir. This is the 2017 Emmaline Ann Vineyard, which is just about 15-minute drive from here down into the little town of Freestone and back up onto the hill. And then we have our oldest block of Pinot Noir from the Coastlands Vineyard where we are now. Pinot only lasts because it's 2015. So we have all 17s here, and then we have a 2015 Rice Spivak Pinot Noir, one that I know you love yourself.
Yes.
And
oh my God, you can't say that word without me getting excited. Here she is.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I guess, all right, it's 5:05. We can officially join. Oh gosh, I've got some Chicago family on. This is so exciting. It's about 7 o'clock Chicago time, so just a little wine before dinner, I guess. Okay. So Ross, why don't we start, for those people that might not know you, I'm pretty sure we have a good amount of your wine club members on here because you invited them, which is awesome. If you could just share a little bit more about your background for those that might not know.
Sure. My family, my mother and father, Diane and David Cobb, planted the Coastlands Vineyard where we are right now in 1989. Some of the first Pinot Noir plantings out here 3 miles from the coast, 1,200 foot elevation. Back in 1989, started my family in the Pinot Noir grape growing business. And then after about 10 years of selling our Pinot Noir grapes to William Selliam, the early Coastlands Vineyard designate William Selliams.
Oh.
We still sell them a little bit of Pinot Noir for their Vineyard designate Coastlands Vineyard program. But early on, and then by about 2001, after Cobb Wines in 2000, my mother and father and my brother and I. And 2001 is the first vintage of Cobb from one block of Coastlands Vineyard. And then now we're into the 20th vintage. 2020 is the 20th vintage of Cobb Wines. So there we go.
So I just sort of realized that this was your 20th anniversary as you and I were prepping for this. So I feel like we might have to do this again in a couple months and do like a birthday party version. I mean,
Sure.
had I known, I would have done a cake and probably dressed up in birthday wear. But that's really exciting. 20 years.
I know. Thank you. It's really exciting. Time does fly.
Yeah. Holy cow. And it's funny because I've actually been to your vineyard and, God, I feel like such a lucky girl. The fact that I have been to your vineyard and I know you and I'm sitting down and talking to you for an hour, it's pretty amazing. So thank you for sharing your time and your knowledge. And funny story I have to share just because I like to brag a little bit about your wines for you. The day I visited your winery, your vineyards, was a Friday. I remember it was the most gorgeous day. I, of course, got lost getting up. You warned me the nav wasn't going to work. It worked, but I lost it and then I got lost. And then we spent a couple hours tasting and it was a little foggy. Your vineyards were definitely not as blue skies as driving up, but that's expected by the coast. Fell in love with all of your wines, and the Rice Spivak was just that one that, you always have one that stands out a little bit more that you're like, that's my baby. Well, the next night I was having a very, very spectacular dinner with some friends in from Chicago at the French Laundry. And I asked what Pinot they had by the glass, and it was your Rice Spivak. So I feel like it just cemented how amazing your wines are, the Rice Spivak. I mean, me and the Sam at the French Laundry agreeing on the same Pinot is pretty complimentary. But anyway, I just had to throw that out there.
That's an awesome story.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's keep going about you. Forget about me. Shall we start with the Chardonnay?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, I don't know who's joining along. So guys, a couple little housekeeping I did forget to tell you. If you have questions, it would be great if you put them in the question box, because then when we're ready for questions, I can go there and they won't get missed. Obviously, throw in your comments. So those of you that are tasting with us, as we sip and taste the Chardonnay, let us know what you think. Comment and text, and then Ross and I can sort of respond and engage back.
Sure. Yeah, some of you may have the wine, some of you probably don't. We'll talk you through the flavors, the style, kind of what inspired me to make. I'll start by is to take the whole. The Chardonnay grape, right to a stainless to the kind of mid 40s Fahrenheit, and let that juice settle out. And then we rack it clean, which means transferring it off some of that sediment, that lees. And then we go directly to barrel, and we barrel ferment. Typically older French oak barrels are suitable for a Chardonnay. And we ferment in barrel for about 3 to 4 months through the holidays, and racking the wines now a couple times, and then full malolactic, not much new oak, 10, 15, 20% new French oak. The rest
When you say old, how old? Like 3 to 4 years? Because I'm not tasting much oak, so obviously that's intentional.
Is aged for 17 months in barrel, but most of these barrels are older French oak barrels. So yeah, 4, 5, 6-year-old French oak barrels with just a touch of new oak.
Okay.
Great acidity.
Great.
Out here where we are, we get great natural acidity here. After malolactic fermentation, very crisp and light. Just the type of Chardonnay that I love, kind of the northern Burgundy, northern French style Chardonnay that I prefer, even after full malolactic and a little bit of new French oak, very crisp and lively and
Mhm. Yeah, very
mm,
fresh. Like the total opposite of, sometimes you hear the word, a little too buttery in California. I would not describe
sure,
this as that.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Mm.
you can see the colors, kind of a light golden, very very beautiful. It's hard to tell what it smells and tastes like just looking at it, but you can imagine it's definitely not a darker kind of tropical fruit style Chardonnay. It's more of a crisp, like citrus notes and
Yeah, I
slight.
was gonna say like lemon and, more tart. Like I don't want to say green fruit because it's not too green, but definitely more of that versus some of the sweet like honeysuckle.
Mhm.
I'm not smelling that.
Right. Sometimes you get a little bit of melon and then into tropical fruit. This is definitely not in that spectrum. It's more on the, like you said, the citrus and more crisp citrus notes.
And can you explain with your cold climate, why it's typical for you to be having that type of flavor profile in the Chardonnay versus like a super, super, super warm one? The acidity.
Sure, sure. I mean, basically, the Chardonnay grape will grow very well in a diverse range of climates, and the warmer the climate, as you get further away from the cool ocean, the Pacific Ocean, the warmer it gets, the more tropical and ripe fruit flavors will come out of the Chardonnay, no matter how ripe or unripe you pick. As you get to the coast, you get less of the tropical and melon fruits and more of the citrus, lemon, slight lemon curd, maybe a little bit. So it's very temperature climate dependent. So when I'm picking my Chardonnay, for example, here, we're picking normal, mid-late September at 22 bricks or, 12 and a half, 13% alcohol, but no green notes, but also no tropical notes, kind of right in the middle at that citrus note. It's kind of typical when you're in northern Burgundy, like Chablis and even the Côte Beaune. You'll get more citrus notes, and then as you get southern into France, into the warmer, say Rhone or Beaujolais to Rhone areas, you'll notice those Chardonnays down there start to get a little more rich and tropical and riper, no matter how the wines are made or when the wines are picked.
Okay. Well, and that's so great about, when you get good at blind tasting, if you have to, deduct which region it's from and the flavor profile, you can sort of tell if you're smelling and tasting those acidic flavors, it's probably going to be a cooler climate Chardonnay versus a warmer climate. Cool. So it's funny because, I mean, when we first met, I feel like I know of you as this like king of Pinot.
Yep.
I mean, obviously a lot of Pinot Noir producers also make Chardonnay, but I think for a little while, I maybe didn't know about your Chardonnay.
Right. Well, not much was made. I mean, in 2009, I made 100 cases from a vineyard right down the road called Joy Road Vineyard, very one-off, 1 year. But I was a winemaker at Flowers Winery for 9 years, making a substantial amount of coastal Chardonnay,
Yeah.
and William Sellingham before that, Hirsch Winery after that. So I've
Yeah.
always been a pretty skilled Chardonnay producer, but under the Cobb label, under my family, it's hard to find.
Sorry, you're sort of going in and out. You said it's hard to find what? It's hard.
Suitable sites for Chardonnay out here
Yeah.
in the western Sonoma Coast. It's hard to find people that want to plant Chardonnay versus planting Pinot Noir.
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, I
Most
would imagine
people
you get
have
more
a
money for the
site out
Pinot,
here.
right?
Yeah, exactly. It used to be the case you could get almost $2,000 more a ton for Chardonnay
Yeah.
or for Pinot Noir. So no one was planting Chardonnay. So you have to really search and find landowners or grape growers yourself. It takes a a lot of foresight to find and to acquire a really nice Chardonnay site. So that's why I've been a little cautious to jump into Chardonnay for Cobb until I could find a site or
well, I know one of your neighbors who's
for me.
I would say also very well known in the Chardonnay world, Mr. Kistler. He has a site pretty close to you, and he's definitely growing some Chardonnay there.
Yes. I think it's mostly Pinot Noir.
Oh my God, you're right. Oh my God, sorry, you're right. He's not making Chardonnay there.
But totally you're right. Lying. It would be an amazing site. Is right next door to Kistler's Occidental Pinot Noir site and winery is the Platte Vineyard, and so the Platte
maybe that's what
Vineyard
I'm thinking of.
Has an amazing Chardonnay that a handful of people have made Chardonnay from that site, and that's literally 2 miles from here, very, very close.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So it's limited and you have to find it. And I bet it's probably competitive to get those grapes.
They are, and they're not cheap. They're not cheap, those Chardonnay grapes.
So speaking of price point, how much does this Chardonnay go for?
This is a $70 Chardonnay. It actually is just as expensive to make a Chardonnay and just as challenging to make a Chardonnay of this quality from coastal, low-yielding vineyards. It's actually about the same economics as Pinot Noir. So I've always priced my Chardonnays at
You do not have to defend the price
above.
of Chardonnay to me. Like Chardonnay, I mean, lately, as you know, I have a Pinot Noir event, but like I love Chardonnay. So I don't think we need to defend the price of Chardonnay. And to your point, if it's the same workload, but that's really good for the consumer to understand that.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. A lot of people have that general misunderstanding that that a Chardonnay is a white wine, so it's going to be easier and cheaper to make. But it's actually quite the opposite. It's just very, very.
Yeah.
If people are looking for a Chardonnay that's going to really wow the best of the best Chardonnay drinkers and collectors, as well as someone that maybe is close to California Chardonnay just by bad experience. This is a Chardonnay that definitely will change your perspective and change your mind of what California Chardonnay should and can be.
Well, we have a very exciting comment from Doc's Ranch, who is on this joining, and he said they planted the Chardonnay in 2011, and the 17 vintage being tasted is Ross's first vinification of their grapes. So that's exciting. Another birthday milestone.
Yes. Hello, welcome to the Instagram Live.
Thank you for that fun fact. Please keep them coming. And reminder for those of you that just joined, please, if you have questions, another fan, Rob, mhoff76248 says hello. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in the question box, and then when we're sort of in between, we can hit those up. Okay, well, should we move on?
Yes.
Not that I'm not enjoying and loving this Chardonnay, but we do have 3 Pinots to taste, which is an aggressive lineup with all this chatter in between.
I love it. I'll just add one more thing, Emily, is that the Chardonnay, to Brian Sheets' point, the Chardonnay is planted from Coastlands Vineyard on the other side of the ridge up here in Fitzpatrick Lane. And Brian Sheets and his wife planted this Chardonnay along with 7 other acres of Pinot Noir. And this is probably one of my most prized kind of expansions of Cobb Wines, is working with the Sheets family and their Doc's Ranch Vineyard next door. So thank you. So here we are moving on to the next wine, which is Pinot Noir.
The Emmaline, right?
Yes, and I pronounce it Emmaline like Ann, Emmaline like vine, and it's Emmaline Ann.
And is that your grandmother? I remember you told me this when we first met.
That is actually the so this vineyard is owned by Wayne and Nancy Honeycutt, who live about 15 minutes from here on the vineyard. Wayne and Nancy Honeycutt own this vineyard, and Nancy's grandmother's maiden name is Emmaline Ann. And so so when they planted the vineyard, and we are one of the first, actually the second people to work with this Pinot Noir vineyard back in 2006, When I first vineyard designated it '06, we needed to come up with a name, and the vineyard name that we all agreed on, since Honeycut was used over in Napa, we decided on using their family name. So it's Emmaline Ann Vineyard, and it's a tiny little.
Sorry, my French bulldog. It's a matter of time before she freaks out. Okay.
She'll be fun.
I'm just gonna take a quick picture before we forget. Oh shoot! Okay. That's a nice story. It's always nice when you weave in the family history, and especially your partners and your vineyard partners. It's so important.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you own a winery, a small winery. Cobb Wines were, barely 3,000 cases, and between the vineyards that we work with, the ones we're talking about today are a combination of relationships. You either have a vineyard that you have a long-term contract with, and you have a relationship with the owners, and you purchase the grapes, and that's the Emmaline Ann, or you own the vineyard, like the Coastlands Vineyard, which my family has owned since 1988, 89 when we planted it. And then back to Rice Spivak, we'll have last is a vineyard that we have a long-term contract, and we purchase the grapes, but we have a relationship with the owners. And then right in the middle of that relationship is Doc's Ranch, which is I lease the vineyard from Brian Sheets, and we do the farming ourselves. And it's kind of a morph of owning versus long-term contract. So back to the Emmaline Ann. Smell
wait,
this
I feel like
beauty.
Sorry. Helen Spivak is here, which I'm assuming is connected to the Spivak Vineyard.
Helene, hello. Yes, she
oh
owns
my God, I'm getting
Rice
so
Spivak
excited.
Vineyard with her
I'm
husband,
sorry to
Russell.
interrupt, but you know how I feel about this vineyard, and I saw her name, and I just got really excited. I feel like we have all these vineyard celebrities joining us. This is so cool.
I'm glad I sent out an email this morning to everyone just to make sure they knew what we're doing. This is fun.
Well, that's really neat. Yeah. Okay. Sorry to interrupt.
So Helene, we'll get to your vineyard that'll be the finale. We're doing the 15 Rice Spivak today. So we'll get into your family and your story when we get to the fourth wine. So the Emmaline Ann, I'm going to describe the aromas, the winemaking. We're going to now get into Pinot Noir production. So this wine has a beautiful plum and raspberry aroma, a little bit of spice, a little bit of kind of wet soil, kind of like a damp fall soil, like earthiness, but not in a microbial earthy, just like a kind of a underbrush, pine needles, but without the pine aroma.
Like almost after it rains, how the forest smells.
Exactly, almost like that wet, like redwood bark, from the tree. And then 17 vintage of Emmaline is one of my favorite vineyards of all times. It's kind of my house favorite because it's so elegant, so beautiful, dark and red fruits, combination of kind of everything I love in a Pinot Noir. A lot of whole cluster in the fermentation. So when I'm picking these grapes at say 13% alcohol, I'm fermenting it with a lot of the whole intact bunches of grapes that settle at the bottom of the fermentation vat, and about 50% of it is whole cluster, and the 50% of it's destemmed.
Can you explain? I know that. Can you just clarify what whole cluster and destem means for people that might not know the terminology, please?
Sure. When the fruit is picked, when the bunches of grapes are picked from the vineyard, they're delivered to the winery, and we typically will take off the stem and leave the whole berries, and start the fermentation that way. But what I've learned over the years, and it's become pretty popular, is people will have different percentages of the whole cluster that they don't disturb or they don't destem. And so what you can do is you can take the whole bunch of grapes and layer it in the bottom of the fermentation vat, and at 0 to 20 to 50% whole cluster, depending on your style. And then the rest of the fruit will be destemmed and layered on top. So what I'm describing my winemaking, I will say this is 0% whole cluster or no stems, or 50% whole cluster or 50.
Okay. Yeah, and it's interesting because the more technical I try to get when I'm talking to winemakers, it's interesting comparing Yeah, stem inclusion versus not. And someone else explained it to me that including the stem. Oh, can you hear me, Ross? Including the stem is a great way to also have a reflection of the terroir, right?
Stem, it's the woody component of the vine that makes it into the fermentation vat. So the balance of the vine, all the shoots and the leaves and the structure and the trunk of the vines, all of that has been left in the vineyards.
Yeah.
The stem is kind of a reflection, or it's it's an indication of what's going on in the vine. So you'll get some more of the sap from the vine in that stem. You'll get a little more of the kind of the reflection of the soil. It's a good reflection of how that vine is growing. Is it a very fertile and kind of green vintage, or is it a kind of a drier, more earthy vintage? And so the whole cluster will definitely reflect on that vintage, as well as the terroir or the site that the vines are grown on.
It would be really fun. I don't think a winemaker would ever do this, but if one year you did like a barrel of, inclusion, whatever, 50% stem inclusion, and then you did a barrel with none, and then we could taste them side by side. That would be so fun.
We do that. If you hang out with me more, Emily, at the winery, that's what we do. We do experiments, 0, 50, 100%. And we keep them separate as long as we can. And then getting closer to the bottling date, we have to make decisions of how we blend the wines. And it's a really cool way to learn about winemaking technique as well as the vineyard.
It feels like you just invited me to join to watch you guys blend. I don't know. Maybe that would be a good learning experience.
Yes. Yeah, I'll add you to my Google Calendar.
I mean, I've been to Harvest, and I have to say the wineries have been really nice on me. Like, I'm like, don't be so easy on me. Put me to work. But just sitting there watching, and I can take a lot of photos. It would be very informative and fun. We do have one question that I want to make sure we cover before we move on to. What? Yeah, so it's a Chardonnay question, but before we go deep into. Can you see it, or would you like me to read it to you?
I do. Hi, do you think California Chardonnay has surpassed Burgundy in quality? We do. Well, I love that question because we're in Chardonnay and we're in California here. I mean, it's kind of like talking about runners, like athleticism. Have we surpassed Burgundy? It kind of depends on the vintage. It depends on the producer, and it depends on the grape grower. And a lot of what we're doing in California, and we're starting to learn that Chardonnay is very particular where it's grown and how it performs in a wine later. It really is sensitive to its environment. And so as winemakers in California, we're starting to be more sensitive and more careful where we grow Chardonnay and when we pick and how much new oak we use. So we're learning what people in Burgundy have known for many years, and we're starting to learn the tricks of Chardonnay can be very difficult to make balanced, and it's also very easy to mess up. We always say as winemakers, Chardonnay is the easiest wine to mess up because you can over oak it, you can pick it in too ripe of a climate, you can grow it in too ripe of a climate, and you can pick it a little bit too ripe, and it really gets kind of tropical and loses its vitality and freshness very, very easily. So Dan, we surpassed Burgundy. It's I'm happy to have your support. Yeah.
Okay, good. Great answer. And then I've got one more question while we're talking about this. Doc's Ranch Wine is wondering what you think the lack of rainfall so far and cool temperatures out on the coast, how that's going to impact the 2020 wines.
Ooh, well, it's a difficult time to predict. I always say that the vintage quality of the vintage is really determined in the weather between kind of 6 weeks leading to harvest and up to harvest. So we still have a lot of time before we're in
That peak time.
We have followed up 2 or 3 inches in March, and a little bit in April, maybe a quarter inch, an inch,
Yeah.
half an inch. Right now, the soil is pretty well saturated, as I can see from my garden. It's still wet and cool, and so we're getting actually a slow start here in on the West Sonoma coast. So if anything, we're going to have a little bit of a later year, which for me produces some of the most beautiful wines when we have the harvest in early October versus mid-September.
You answered my question. By later,
so
you mean
I would say
time.
Impact, yeah, exactly, leading into the harvest time. Yep.
Well, and I just realized, Ross, the 2020 vintage is your 20th. Talk about lucky numbers. I mean, I think it's going to be a blow it out of the ballpark for you guys.
I hope so. I hope so.
Especially if I'm there helping blend.
I always joke, I always laugh that I started Cobb Wines in 2001, which is the best year to start a winery, because it's my 20th vintage in 2020. It's very, very tidy. But yeah, 20th vintage.
Nice.
Yes. Okay, so Emmaline Ann,
well,
we can talk about more winemaking if you have, and I'm happy to go back and talk about Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, Chardonnay production as well. But this is super fun.
okay.
I handpicked these 4 wines.
I told you, I was like, we are going to use up an hour before you know it.
This is great. We've got 2 wines in 30 minutes.
Okay, so shall we move on to the Coastlands?
Sure.
I don't want to rush you. I just thought that's what you were getting at.
That's exactly what I'm getting at. I'm excited to try the Coastlands as well.
Let me show everybody the bottle. So you guys, don't worry if you didn't happen to buy these wines ahead of time. They're still available on Cobb Wines. So,
yes,
I mean, hopefully this is like FOMA. You're watching us, listening, and you're jealous, and you're going to order these. So go to Cobb Wines, and there's also a listing on my Instagram and Ross's if you forget what we had today. Don't worry. So it's very clearly laid out, or you can always ask me and I'll tell you if you want to mimic this tasting. Okay,
these 4 wines are available. Go to our website. You don't need to be a member. You can go check right into Cobb Wines, and you can order these 4 wines as a 4-pack with free shipping. And it's a really good value because these are between 70, 75, 80, and $85 a bottle normally. So today we're doing about $50 a bottle as a 4-pack with free shipping. And you can go to, once again, go to Cobb Wines. You can pick these up right now. If you want to give a gift to someone that hasn't tried Cobb Wines, this is a great opportunity.
Or actually, that's a good idea. Get your mom a Mother's Day gift, and make sure to get yourself one, because all of you guys know what a Pinot Noir snob and lover I am. And these are like literally some of my favorites. So it's awesome. So if you trust me and you trust wine, Ross, you will be
Ross
in good hands. I know, I'm like Ross. That's a tongue twister.
So yeah, so now we're into the Coastlands Vineyard. The Old Firs is, and I actually take the liberty of the phone here. If you can see, there's a tree right up here called the Old Firs tree, a very old Douglas fir tree that we did not plant, that was here on the property, and the block of Coastlands Old Firs Pinot Noir is right on the other side of these little brush right here. And the Coastlands Vineyard goes down to from 1,200 feet down to almost 900 feet below us. So this is the oldest block of Pinot Noir that we planted. So these vines are, big, tree stumps, and they are dry farmed, no irrigation or fertilizer necessary. We do a very similar vinification with about 50 to 70% whole cluster. aged for 22 months in barrel, typical for our Pinot Noirs. And this wine is incredibly rich on the palate, but then light and vibrant with, you know, bright raspberry and cherry on the aroma.
Yeah.
Just touch of sappiness from the old vines.
That's great. Yeah, they're very different. So how would you describe, I mean, obviously different vineyards. How do you intend to have each of these wines have its own sort of profile and personality?
Well, we've talked about the Chardonnay. The Emmaline is about 12.5% alcohol, which is pretty typical for me. 17 vintage was an outstanding vintage for moderate alcohol. This Coastlands Vineyard right here, 30-year-old vines, 12.1% alcohol. It's almost,
yeah.
I didn't intentionally make it that low, but it was one of those vintages that just was so expressive and so gorgeous at lower sugar or alcohol percentages. So, but very rich and lots of depth for a 12.1% alcohol Coastlands Old Firs. Just a beautiful example of what you can do on the coast with moderate alcohol with really good vineyards.
Yeah, and they definitely have different noses. I mean, you could probably identify these with your eyes shut by the nose, I'm going to guess.
There's a little more, like kind of savory notes on the Old Firs Coastlands. There's also a little bit more sappiness, as I mentioned, and there's also a little bit of kind of spice, but almost like a little bit. There's a little bit of the bay tree aromatic, slightly. Very, very, very complex terroir here. Lots of years of redwood and oak and Douglas fir and trees just living and flourishing out here on the Sonoma coast.
So it's pretty
contributes
cool
to the wine.
I don't know if people know this. I think you briefly said it, but just in case they missed it or just joined. So this vineyard, can you just share a little bit more about your family vineyard? And I know you touched on it, but just briefly.
Of course. My mother, Diane, and my father, David Cobb, planted this vineyard in 1989 with the intention of growing Pinot Noir for a couple wineries. And we built the house here that we live at and overlooking the ocean. My father is a marine biologist, and he wanted to build a house, plant a vineyard overlooking the ocean. And so my father, David, is still healthy and doing wonderful. David is 80 years ago. Unfortunately, we've named one of the blocks Diane Cobb after my late mother. But my mother and father decided to plant Pinot Noir out here, and then I converted it to wine and started a family winery with my mother, father, and my brother. So that's the story. Just kind of very small, 100 cases, 200 cases the first few years of Cobb Wines, and just slowly grown to about 2,000 or 3,000 people mailing list.
Holy cow! Well, 400. So Ross, which states are you in? Because I mean, I know a lot of my followers are either in. Uh-oh, sorry, I lost you.
I hear you.
You can hear me? Okay.
I hear
so,
you.
I used to live in New York. I'm from Chicago. Now I live in California. So I think a lot of my followers are all over the place. So which states, I mean, is the best place to buy you? Either just direct from you? Are there any wine stores in certain towns that they could find you at?
Of course. I mean, depending on which area they're in, we're in lots of shops, lots of restaurants around the country. Distributed well. I'm working on New York is very strong. Northern, Southern Carolina. We're very strong in Nevada, Colorado, Texas, New Mexico. But all of my wines are available right now from our website.
And didn't you say free shipping?
Love to sell to you direct.
I know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Free shipping.
That's awesome.
With this 4-pack, which is a really good deal. I mean, that's saving you 40 to $60 right there. Yep. Yeah. So we love selling you wine direct, of course, but we do support a lot of shops, 400 or 500 restaurants and shops around the country, and actually all over the world. We're in Tokyo. We're in a couple restaurants in Berlin, all over
Wow.
Germany, Sweden, Denmark,
Who
the
does your
UK.
sales? They've done
But
a really
small
good
amounts,
job.
20, 30
That's
cases to each of
amazing.
those markets. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it's always
Thank you.
nice. Oh, so
I'm
good
kind of a
job,
one-man
Ross. So, I
show,
mean, it's
so.
always nice, obviously, hopefully people, they'll go order and enjoy it in a couple days and send it to their mom. But also what I think, when people ask me like, what wine should I order or what should I buy? It's like, it's just nice to learn about a new brand that you might not already know about. If you don't know about Cobb Wines, you've been living under a Pinot Noir block, but now you know.
Thank you.
So then also when you're at those restaurants, you're like, ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
That's that cool boutique wine, and the winemaker's been, I mean, your resume is spectacular. So yeah. So just in case people, maybe don't purchase tomorrow,
Thank
in
you.
a couple of months when the restaurants reopen, they'll keep an eye out for you and find you on a lot of the top restaurants across the country.
Yep. Yep, we support a lot of shops here in California. K&L has us all over California, northern, southern. I think we're probably at 220 restaurants in California,
Oh my God.
and shops in California. Of course, we're supporting a lot of the shops right now, and so in this process, we're also supporting
Good.
a lot of the restaurants that are doing to-go orders. I've made a very good price for a couple of my wines that
Yeah.
restaurants can sell with their to-go orders to help keep their cash flow going.
Yeah.
And that's been really helpful for them, and good cash.
Good.
Yeah.
Just a little feedback. Francis Brunn says, yes, Dallas, Texas loves Cobb Wines. I wish I could say it with a cool Texas accent. And then we have another question. Patrick Seaver would like to know, this is tough. What is your favorite vineyard designation?
Well, I appreciate the proper grammar, because you're referring to the Cobb Wines here. Well, Patrick, we haven't even finished the lineup yet, but we're getting there. I think I alluded to, you may have missed it, but actually the Emmaline Ann is kind of my house favorite, even though it's not a vineyard I own. It's one that I've been working with since 2006. I love the Emmaline Ann. This is kind of my house favorite, even though the Old Firs has a little more richness and sappiness, and the vines that my mother and father planted, even though the Rice Spivak that Helene and Russell planted back in 2000, and we started making from 2003 vintage, the Rice Spivak. I love this wine, but every wine has a time and place. Some wines are best to be aged for 10 years, and some wines are ready to go right off the bat. I would have to say the Emmaline is the most diverse, meaning it's great with age. It's also nice when it's young. So I'm going to be honest. I think the Emmaline is kind of my favorite vineyard designate. But the Rice Spivak and Coastlands have been the most important and longest vineyard designates that I've worked with. And now, of course, the Docks Ranch is just mind-blowing. The vineyard has Calera clone, Swan clone selections, as well as Pommard and 114 Pinot Noir. And those wines are also available on our website. But the Docks Ranch is going to be the one that starts turning heads in the next year or two as people start to open these bottles in the cellar.
We have this recorded, and we're gonna say, we told you so.
Yeah. But it's there's definitely preferences for certain palates, but I love the Emmaline for sure. I love it. It's just gorgeous. So do you want to move on to the final?
Sure.
Rice
Oh my gosh.
Spivak
Yeah, we only have 15 minutes. We better definitely get to Rice Spivak, since that's like sort of how we know each other.
The Rice Spivak and Helene and Russell were introduced to me and my father back in 2002, 2003, when the vineyard had first been planted. The location of the Rice Spivak vineyard is just 20 minutes down the ridge from Coastlands Vineyard here, in the Sebastopol, Hessel, southwest Sebastopol area, I call. It's not quite down into the Petaluma Gap, but just north of that, very close to the Literai pivot, winery site. If people have been to the Literai winery site, it's kind of in that neighborhood. There's another famous vineyard called Kanzler that's in that same neighborhood. Rice Spivak has volcanic ash, kind of a lens over a Gold Ridge series soil. Beautiful organic matter, not just a sandy loam, but a really good organic component to the Rice Spivak. The vineyard is named after Russell Rice and Helene Spivak, and they had a choice of how we named the vineyard, and we wanted to do something that really meant something, so we did their names, and it's been one of the most important vineyards for Cobb Wines, as well as a really nice selection of LaRue, Reeve, Claypool Cellars also have done a vineyard designate from the Rice Spivak. Fortunately, this vineyard is 6 acres, so there's enough for us to share. And so I contract this vineyard from the Russell Rice and Helene Spivak, and we make Swan Clone 667. 115 and sometimes the 777 section. Very similar vinification. What's unique about this wine, Emily, is this is a 15 vintage, and what's also unique about this wine is it was aged for 32 months in barrel, but not much new oak, kind of an older barrels for those last period. So this is an example of a Pinot Noir that can age in older barrels and some new barrels. Beautiful aromas here. And we're done. No, thank you. No. Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, so any questions? Rice Spivak, once again, just gorgeous, gorgeous vineyard. When I started Cobb Wines with my mother and father in 01, we had Coastlands Vineyard and we had Rice Spivak, and those are the two bottlings that we had from 03, 04, 05, and then 06, and then 06 we introduced Emmaline, and then onward from there. So it's the Rice Spivak and Coastlands are kind of the heart to heart vineyards of so Mhm. Yes, no, it is. I mean, we're all, this is a relationship. And hi, Jamie, glad you're enjoying that '09. That's a knockout wine. Wow. Thank you, Nick. So we've got Massachusetts out here. Uh, yeah, the Rice Spivak is vineyard. I have friends that say, you know what, I just love the Rice Spivak. That's my vineyard, just like you, Emily. So gorgeous. Like I said, it has a volcanic ash lens to the Rice Spivak. Really, really interesting soil. About 6 miles from the ocean. Just yeah, we're about 3.5, 4 miles from the ocean, and Rice Spivak. Yeah, and then we have miles, and then Rice Spivak's about six miles from the ocean. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. But there was a little lag. There was a little lag when you were talking, but I worked through it. um, yeah. It's anything else to say? I mean, what other questions you have? Yeah, I think we have. Let me see. No, yeah, we did skip it. Yeah. I mean, mhm. Well, it's the first thing when you smell and taste this 2015 rice. Not only was it aged for 32, 33 months, it also is an older wine. So this is a 15 vintage. Um, uh, so it's contrary, or side by side with the Old Firs and Emmaline from 17 vintage. This 2015 definitely smells a little bit, um, a little older, slightly older. It just. Hmm. And typically, what I would say in this one, it's got like a nice cherry, slight cherry cola, but not in a ripe spectrum. A little bit of kind of sour cherry, um, beautiful, beautiful plum, and kind of beautiful plum skin. Uh, just you can smell that area, that kind of just in from Valley Ford, just in from Bloomfield, just slightly north and east of Tomales Bay, in the Hog Island oysters, down there. You could just imagine the fog just whipping up that cool valley at about 300-foot elevation, 6 miles from the ocean. So lots of wind and fog. But then in the afternoon at Rice Spivak, you'll actually get some beautiful sunlight. The um the the sun will kind of come out, and you'll get gorgeous fruit aromatics from the sunlight. But then at nighttime, the fog comes in with a vengeance again. Yep. Hmm. Yes. Sure. Well, because I haven't thought about this, the Chardonnay, I would say dark chocolate. No, just kidding. I'm joking. I'm joking. Um, yeah, light white chocolate. No, let's skip the Chardonnay for chocolate pairing. The Emmeline, I would definitely go with like a dark chocolate for sure. The Old Firs, that's a tough one. I have to think about that. And the Rice Spivak is definitely the chocolate pairing wine. I think you've got it right there. This smells. Hmm. Wow, I think that would work. I think that would be. Wow, that's a tough one. I can't tell you which one it would pair best with. Please do. Let me know. Let me know. We could do a little pairing, but that's a great chocolate. Obviously, the cheese go amazingly well with all of my Pinot Noirs and Chardonnay. But yeah, um, it's a beautiful afternoon. I'm getting this gorgeous warm sun on my back, which is, as you know, anyone that's been in California the last, you know, month and a half, it's we had about 55 to 58 degree highs for a month in March. And so it's like in the 80s, which is welcome to Sonoma County here. Mhm. Yeah, no, this is a great. Yeah, Dolores is a beautiful climate. That whole area, the Mission, is it's gorgeous. Kind of on the leeward side, on the more protected side of San Francisco. I love it. Oh, yeah, beautiful. Oh, well, good. Well, yeah, come up soon. Not too soon, but come up soon. Once everything's settled, country and world is healthy out there and gets through this. Please call me. My information's online on my website, Cobb Wines. Um, please buy my wines, and please check in with me and ask me questions about which wines you love and which wines to order, because I'm always there for you to give you advice on orders. And yeah, cheers. Yeah. What? Yeah. Yes, I do. I do. Yeah. Yeah. Well, loud and clear. This is my first Instagram live. I'm sorry to. Oh, you're muted. I can hear you. I heard you the whole time. I hear you, but maybe you are muted. Hmm. Hmm. Well, I